Good afternoon. We're going to start today by doing a little bit of visualization. So I'm going to ask you to make yourselves comfortable, close your eyes, and come with me on a journey. Listen to the glorious bird song. Take a few deep breaths. Ready? Picture this. It's Saturday morning. You've just woken up, and perhaps you have a hangover from an outstanding Friday night. Or perhaps, like me, you're being poked in the eye by an enthusiastic child wanting breakfast. You open your eyes and start to think about the day ahead. You're going running this morning, you have to take the dog for a walk, the kids have a million different clubs, and you've got friends coming for dinner. Importantly, you know you need to go grocery shopping. And as you lie there, ignoring the throbbing head or the small finger jabbing in your eyeball, you know that grocery shopping should really involve a trip to the farmer's market for fresh, local, regeneratively grown vegetables and fruit. And then you should head across town to the deli because they have a butcher that stocks delicious grass-fed beef and pork. And finally, you should head to the refill shop in another neighborhood to restock on flour, pasta, and rice. You know you should be buying food that is seasonal, local, not in single-use plastic packaging, organic, sustainable, and healthy, because it's good for you and it's good for the planet. But today, traipsing around town is not something you can face. So you think, stuff it. I'm going to go to the supermarket, where I can get everything I need in one shop, and I'll worry about the environment tomorrow. Let's face it, we've all been there. But what if? What if when you go to the grocery store, there's a new story in town? What if when you head to the cheese aisle, you spot Silvo cheeses? And Silvo makes a deliciously indulgent range of both dairy and plant-based cheeses that are good for the planet. They've got award-winning cheeses, and they've been made with walnuts and cow's milk, which are grown together symbiotically on silver pasture farms. You love the sound of this, and the ideas of cows being managed amongst food-producing trees. So you pop a packet in your basket. You head off to the cereal aisle, as the kids are running low on their breakfast staple. Reaching out for a box of Climate Crunch, you marvel at how Regenerate's Climate Crunch is a blend of regeneratively grown wheat and peas that is super delicious and also contributes to helping tackle climate change and biodiversity loss. And best of all, the kids absolutely love it. A few more things to get, so you swing by the biscuit aisle. Last week, you discovered Sweet Up's range of cookies made with upcycled flour from the byproducts of the plant-based milk process. Even better, they are naturally sweetened using fruit pulp and help farmers find value in what used to be thought of as waste. Excitingly, you find 2 new varieties and pop a box of each in your basket. Finally, you head through to the fresh vegetables. Grabbing a bag of down-to-earth potatoes, you are again struck by how far potato farming has come, and that these delicious, resilient potato varieties are in fact just like the potatoes of a few years back, only now grown in a way that reduces their carbon footprint and biodiversity impact. That should be supermarket shopping, where products that actively tackle climate change and biodiversity loss are widely available in grocery stores. And all the choices you were able to make were the result of a shift in the way that we think about what goes into our food products, where the growing and producing of food ingredients and products have been guided by the principles of a circular economy, where food manufacturers have embraced circular design for food to put nature at the heart of food design. This is circular design for food. Open your eyes and join me back in the room. Welcome to an introduction to circular design for food. So I'm Rhaenyra, and I lead the food initiative at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And today, with my colleagues Henrietta and Rebecca, we're going to guide you through how food can and should be designed, putting nature at the heart of how those design decisions are made. But before we kick off in earnest, and I do hope you enjoyed my story, we're going to head over to Asia, and we're going to see how rice can be grown in a very different way, and how Lotus Foods, an American company, is working with rice farmers to put nature at their heart of the food design decisions.
We really can't overstate the importance of rice. Over 1 billion people derive their livelihood from rice. It represents 20% of the caloric intake for the world's population. 1/4 to 1/3 of fresh water reserves is allocated to the growing of rice in flooded fields. And when water is flooding a field, it's creating microbes that are producing methane gas. 11 to 15% of man-made methane is a result of flooded rice fields. The economics for many smallholder farmers of rice is dire. Many of them are at the bottom of the pyramid and just can't make ends meet. Any conversation about a circular economy has to take into effect people in the field who are growing the food. Food will be a defining issue of the 21st century. The problem is onboarding another billion people on the planet. We need to grow more rice on less land.
We have to be very, very careful how we produce rice because with the usage of pesticide, chemical fertilizers, water depletion, yield is declining. Our soil is dying.
The system of rice intensification is an agroecological way to grow rice that is regenerative in nature, getting bigger yields without proprietary seeds from multinational companies and the accompanying synthetic chemical fertilizers that go along with them. It's been adopted by about 25 million farmers. There's little changes in how rice is grown. SRI specifies younger seedling planted as a single seed in rows.
एक पेड़ लगाते हैं, पहले हम बहुत लगाते थे 10-12 पेड़। वो रासायनिक से उसमें दवाई डालते हैं, हम लोग नहीं डालते हैं। उनका खर्चा भी ज़्यादा है हमारा। उसमें टाइम की बचत इसलिए ना कि वो जब सीधी पद्धति से लगाते हैं ना तो जल्दी-जल्दी लग जाता है।
The plant gets more aeration, the root develops much better so that it can harvest more nutrients to give better yield.
The major difference with SRI and conventional rice growing is that the fields are not continuously flooded.
There is no anaerobic condition in the soil. There is no production of methane.
In communities that have transitioned to SRI, the soil is drastically improved because of the microbial activity.
Before we started regenerative cultivation, we have analyzed the soil. After 4 years, we see 50 to 70% increase in the carbon.
Farmers can use 90% less seed, 50% less water, double their yields, and produce much more income.
बाद में तो सर बारिश से ही हो जाता है, फिर नीचे का पानी लगाना पड़ता है ना। सर टाइम तो सुबह जाते हैं, जैसे तो सुबह अपने घर का करके चले जाते हैं, भैंस का, गाय का, सब चीज़ का। खेत में जाते हैं, खेत से भी 2 घंटे पहले घर आ जाते हैं।
परिवर्तन हमारे परिवार में परिवर्तन ये है कि जब हमारा खर्चा कम हो रहा है तो हमें बचत भी हो रही है और हम अपने बच्चों को अच्छी जगह।
Lotus Foods is a specialty rice company. We're really proud that we are keeping the biodiversity of rice alive with creating markets for heirloom rices. We're creating stable supply chain that can provide food to feed the increasing population. And we have to do it by putting the carbon into the soil, not into the atmosphere.
We have the fantastic farmers who understand the importance of SRI cultivation. At the same time, we have the Lotus Foods who are buying our rice to give the best quality products for the consumers around the world.
As a business, we have seen that these increased costs have paid off because consumers are understanding benefits of regenerative agriculture. As Lotus Foods grew, we knew that to be successful in the marketplace, we needed to create value-added products. So these value-added products included a rice ramen, rice pad thai noodles, rice udon noodles. So we were the first company to take rice and make a rice-based ramen. Organic SRI is inherently regenerative. We're talking about animal welfare, immunity, and people health. The reason why we wanted to be one of the first companies to have a regenerative organic certified rice so that we could show the world how important it was to grow rice, this amazing crop that feeds half the world's population, without greenhouse gas emissions, without lots of water. Actually, it's good for business. That's the bottom line. Businesses are in the business of creating wealth, but it's not just wealth for themselves anymore. And that's where SRI comes in. It benefits the farmer, it benefits the land, it benefits the community, it benefits the consumer who eats this more nutritious rice. It's wealth for all stakeholders.
Hello and welcome to our introduction to circular design for food. My name is Rebecca Hesketh.
And my name's Henrietta Goddard.
We very much hope that you enjoyed the video, and it's exciting to see the actions already been undertaken to create a nature positive change in the way that we produce our food, but also in a way that benefits farmers too. In this short section, we are going to be taking you through what circular design for food is and the power it holds to transform the food system in order to help nature, of which we are all part of, and us to thrive. But before we get started, we wanted to give you 2 questions for you to bear in mind as we go throughout this talk. So the first is, what inspires you the most from what you have heard? And the second is, what can you start today? So we will ask these questions to you later on, so be ready with your answers.
So what has a circular economy got to do with food? So before we kick off this section in earnest, we'll go back to basics. So as you know, as you all very well know, we live in a very linear system today. So very crudely, we take finite resources, we make stuff, that includes food, we use that stuff, and very often we throw it away, wasting all the effort and the sweat and the tears and the money that went into making that stuff in the first place. Yesterday, in one of the talks, I heard it described as a doom and gloom loop, which I thought was rather good. This system includes how we produce and consume our food. And while we have to acknowledge that this model has sustained a growing population and it's brought economic development for some, it does have severe consequences on our natural environment, on our health, and on our economies. It's not sustainable in the long term.
However, as you will all know, a circular economy is based on 3 principles: eliminate waste and pollution, circulate products and materials, and regenerate nature. It's design-led. Rather than creating things and fixing the problems later, if we use these principles in anything that we design, from clothes to food, from the outset, we can avoid creating issues later on, and perhaps even leave things better off, enabling businesses, people, and nature, again, as which we are all part of, and we do forget this, to thrive in the long term. And when applying these principles to food, we think about eliminating food loss and waste, circulating nutrients and upcycling ingredients, and of course, the way we produce our food, which is one of the most powerful ways in which we can regenerate nature.
So talking of doom and gloom, we know that the food system globally is responsible for 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions and 1/2 of human-induced pressures on biodiversity. But we can flip this on its head, and the food system can and must be a part of the solution. We also know that just the top 10 fast-moving consumer goods companies and retailers influence about 40% of agricultural land in the EU and the UK alone. Their sourcing power is huge, and therefore so is their impact on landscapes and the ecosystems in them. They have an opportunity to play a meaningful part in shifting our food system to one that helps nature thrive, and that also supports the livelihoods of current and future generations of farmers. But this opportunity is not just limited to large businesses. As we've heard in some of the other sessions, there needs to be a lot of us at the table. So it's big businesses, it's small businesses, it's policymakers, it's farmers, it's you and me in our day-to-day lives. We're all shaping the landscape in some way, and so have a role to play. But that statistic itself points to an area of our food system that can help create change at the scale that we need.
However, we did do some research back in 2021, and that research that we conducted found that whilst 75% of food and agriculture businesses had made public commitments, only a handful had set out tangible plans to shift their entire value chains to a nature-positive food system. Indeed, of the 350 food and agriculture businesses that were assessed by the World Benchmarking Alliance at the time, very few were cited as having a holistic understanding of the role they can play in shifting the food system. But there is also an opportunity for businesses to raise the ambition further. Most commitments at the moment focus on finding single solutions to individual problems, such as solely shifting from industrially produced animal products to plant proteins, or via better sourcing alone. But how we design our food products needs to be part of the solution.
So as Becca said, we have an opportunity or an imperative to raise our ambitions further by shifting our mindsets rather than bending nature to produce food. Like on the left hand of this beautiful image, food can be designed for nature to thrive. Shifting from conventional landscapes today, so I think this artwork is very pretty, but it's depicting monocrops and a very linear system on the left-hand side, and we're moving towards something much more diverse and helping nature thrive on the right-hand side. Today, we get 60% of our consumed calories from just 4 crops. Those are wheat, rice, corn, and potatoes. So it's no wonder that we see great fields of monocrops on the left-hand side. And since being part of the Big Food redesign work, I find that I can no longer travel across the countryside or walk my dog through the countryside or fly over the countryside and only think of how pretty it is. I also start to think and make that connection between food products and what we have in our fridges and what we have in our store cupboards and how they are shaping our landscapes. The products that we consume and the ingredients that go into them shape our landscapes and impact the ecosystems in them.
You may not think it, but all our food is designed. From the pasta you had for dinner last week to the cheese sandwich you had in the office the other day, food designers have a product concept in mind when they create these products. Food design shapes what is eaten, which ingredients are grown, how they are produced, how they're delivered, so how they're packaged. The decisions made here radiate throughout the system. Decisions on how it will taste, how it will look, how it will smell, how it will feel, how good it is for us, but also how good it is for nature. Some businesses are already recognizing the role that food design has to play in positive food system transformation. However, across the food industry at the moment, food design remains an underexplored yet significant opportunity to create products that are not only delicious and tapping into new business growth opportunities, but also help to achieve climate and biodiversity goals. So what if we went beyond food design in our business as usual linear way? If food design was combined with those principles of the circular economy that I mentioned earlier, so eliminate waste and pollution, circulate products and materials, and regenerate nature, what if? So by applying those principles, we can arrive at circular design for food. It is an actionable framework to redesign product portfolios for nature-positive outcomes. It encompasses rethinking product concepts, ingredient sourcing and selection, and packaging. Circular design for food is one tool we can use. It is one important lever that we need to pull in order to create the system shift and to help make possible a future in which food is good for nature, it is good for farmers, and it is good for business. So at the center of this framework, this head of wheat or this lotus flower, whatever you see on the screen, there are different ingredient and selection sourcing opportunities. These are lower impact, diverse, upcycled, and regeneratively produced. Varying combinations of these 4 opportunity ingredient areas can unlock substantial environmental, economic, and yield benefits. So let's dive in and have a look at all of these in a little bit more detail.
So the first opportunity is to source diverse ingredients. To increase the genetic diversity of crops and livestock, businesses can incorporate a broader range of ingredients in their product portfolios. As I mentioned earlier, today just 4 crops provide 60% of our calories globally. So by increasing diversity of crops and breeds, we can build a food system that's more resilient to threats such as pests, diseases, and weather shocks, as well as diversifying our diets. And I have to say, the food here has been delicious. So sweetness, to give you an example, the culinary property of sweetness can be derived not just from sugar cane, sugar beet, or corn, but also from perennial crops such as date palm, carob, and coconut, and high-intensity natural sweeteners such as monk fruit and stevia. A real-life example of an organisation harnessing the potential of the diverse ingredient opportunity is Hodmedods. This is a UK company. They were founded in 2012. They work with British farms and search out less well-known foods like the fava bean, which has been grown in Britain since the Iron Age, but is now almost forgotten. So this image shows one of their flowers. It's made from a botanical blend of sustainably grown ingredients. It has 14 grains, seeds, pulses, and flowers, reflecting the diversity of crop and wild plants one might find in and by a field. So it's essentially a meadow in a bag.
I love that idea of meadow in the bag. So the next opportunity is lower impact ingredients. Now these are often seen as the quick wins and are available by shifting from industrially produced animal products to lower impact alternatives, as well as from higher impact crops to lower impact crops. And this is the example we're going to explore. Designing a wheat-based product, so such as a pasta, as I mentioned earlier, to use peas instead of wheat, could reduce greenhouse gas emissions by a whopping 40%, biodiversity impacts by 5%, and increasing total food output by 5% in the model geographies. So leguminous crops such as beans and peas can reduce the need for synthetic inputs, such as by fixing nitrogen into the soil at much higher rates than cereal crops. But they're also fantastic for the soil and can have a really beneficial impact on soil structure. So we wanted to give you a real-life example of this opportunity put into practice. So here you can see on the screen a lower impact opportunity such as Zen Bee pasta, which is made using yellow peas. So they improve the soil by fixing nitrogen. They require less water to grow than wheat, and they also provide us with a source of protein. Wonderful, I'd say.
And tasty.
And very tasty.
I have cooked it. So the third opportunity is upcycled ingredients. Currently, 28% of agricultural land is used to produce food that is never eaten, and that includes huge volumes of byproducts. At the farm level alone, 1.2 billion tonnes of food is wasted each year, with a value of $370 billion. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be building big piles of money and just wasting them. Upcycling, in addition to preventing food waste and loss, is a way to get the most value from the land, water, and agricultural inputs and effort that went into growing the food in the first place. And it ensures that nutrients are kept in use at their highest value. So an example is if we used upcycled fruit juice byproducts to replace sugar, an area of land roughly the size of Luxembourg could be spared rather than used to grow sugarcane or beets. And a fun example of an existing upcycled ingredient is Sling It Out Stout by Seven Brothers. This is a chocolate stout brewed using upcycled Kellogg's Cocoa Pops. I've also tried this. I've tried quite a lot of this.
Wow. I mean, I don't often have leftover Kellogg's Cocoa Pops.
No, well.
The fourth opportunity is regenerative production. So in recent years, leading businesses have recognised the environmental benefits of regenerative production. And we know that there are conversations that rumble on about how regen should be defined. But when we talk about regenerative production, we refer to growing food in ways that generate positive outcomes for nature, such as healthy and stable soils, improved local biodiversity, and improved air and water quality. But there are also different schools of thought that farmers can draw on for this area, such as regenerative agriculture, agroecology, biodynamic, and regenerative organic. But it's really important that we don't get stuck on definitions, and I really want to stress this point. We would rather focus on outcomes needed for different contexts, as we know there is no one-size-fits-all approach, and practices used need to be appropriate for the local context. So we wanted to give you another example of this opportunity being applied in real life. So I'd like to introduce you to Tamalu Farm in Kenya. They use an agroforestry system, which is where trees and crops are grown on the same area of land. They're producing food, as well as enhancing biodiversity and building soil health. Using this approach, farmers can produce a portfolio of ingredients, so not just one ingredient off a patch of land, but multiple different ingredients, all coming off the same piece of land. And so that farmer is also not reliant on just one enterprise, but instead has the resilience of multiple enterprises. And apparently, now I don't know if you know this, Henrietta, but this farm took only 2 years to get to this stage. And it is really interesting when you compare what you're seeing in the middle to the other fields around it. So we can see monocropping, we can see undiverse fields which surround this area of diversity. And this is what I want to stress, because this farm is going beyond simply introducing in regenerative production to its ingredients. It's also creating a diversity of ingredients from that one farm. So we have seen that this is possible. But what are the benefits? When we did our modelling, we saw that from better sourcing of current ingredients, we can see reductions in both greenhouse gas emissions and biodiversity loss, and, importantly, increased yields and profitability for the farmers in the modelled geographies when you compare this to business as usual.
So more number crunching and bar charts. We're getting very, very nerdy. We modelled wheat, dairy and potatoes in the EU and the UK, and we looked at what the farm level impacts would be if you apply different food ingredient, different food design opportunities to the creation of food products. So for the wheat product, we looked at a box of cereal. For the dairy products, we looked at a carton of milky drink. And for potatoes, it was a bag of fresh potatoes. The green bars that you're looking at refer to better sourcing alone. So in this scenario, the same ingredients were used in the end product, but those ingredients had been produced regeneratively. So it's great, there's an improvement, but it's still the same old ingredients. We're still seeing monocrops. But the blue bars show that the magic happens if you use a combination of the different design opportunities. Compared with business as usual, the aggregated results were that greenhouse gas emissions can be reduced by 70%, biodiversity loss can be reduced by 50%, total food output, remember Becca was talking about more ingredients coming off the same area of land, so you've got portfolios of ingredients, that could increase by 50%, while cash flow for farmers could increase by about $3,000 per hectare on average, obviously following a transition period, and that transition period looks very different depending on whether you're talking about wheat or putting trees into your farm. If you want to dig into those numbers further, there is a technical appendix on our website, and it is not bad reading, actually.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. It's not as heavy as you think. So we want to take you back to the question that we mentioned at the start. So what inspires you most from what you have heard? So this section is going to take a little bit of participation. We want you to turn to your neighbour, and we're going to give you a few minutes, so just a couple of minutes to say hi, introduce yourself, and say what inspires you the most. And then we will go back to the presentation. So your couple of minutes start now. Yeah.
What's that?
Introduce.
How are we doing for time?
Okay, so I am really sorry to break up some of these amazing conversations, and you'd be surprised what I can hear from the stage. There are some really in-depth conversations going on. But what we've really enjoyed is actually giving you a chance to talk about the inspiration, and it's great to hear that so many of you have really engaged with it. So I want to pass over to Henrietta for the next part.
So hopefully we are starting to make that connection between how food products are designed and what then happens at the landscape level. We're really going to labour this point. By applying the circular design for food framework, food businesses can evolve their ingredient portfolios and products. Existing products can be renovated and new products can be developed. Companies' significant sourcing power signal a new demand for what is grown and how. Ingredients grown on the land will become more diverse and increasingly grown regeneratively, reshaping our landscapes and the ecosystems in them, and changing those dog walks and our train journeys as we go through the countryside and admire it. Design is so powerful. Food design is powerful. And guided by the principles of the circular economy, it offers food companies a way to play a meaningful role in helping nature and us as part of it to thrive.
Now, to make this a reality, we have outlined 5 action areas in our Big Food Redesign report. And these are action areas in which businesses can start to act. So the first is creating ambitious, well-resourced action plans. So by putting in place product development strategies that combine those 4 circular design for food principles that we've just talked about, businesses can transform their ingredient portfolios. The second is creating a collaborative dynamic with farmers. Now, strong working relationships with farmers is at the heart of circular design for food. Because regenerative farm systems are established according to their context, there is no universal pathway for every farmer to follow. By designing with farmers, FMCGs, which is fast-moving consumer goods companies, for those of you who might not be familiar with the phrase, and retailers can embed evolving farm system realities into food design strategies over time. Sorry, I went on slide 1 too many there. The third, which is really exciting, is developing iconic products. So to get started and build momentum, which is what we all need in this area, we would like to help businesses to show what is possible through new products that bring circular design for food to life. We want to encourage businesses to create the space that designers need to experiment, to learn, to test new concepts with consumers, and to build a compelling business case. Now here, we have an opportunity for you. One way in which you can do this is join our Big Food Redesign Challenge, which, if you were unlucky enough not to be in our session yesterday, we are going to touch on later on in this section, so please do listen in for that. The challenge aims to inspire the food industry to apply the principles of circular design for food, highlighting its potential to regenerate nature, and will showcase food products that are designed to help nature to thrive. The fourth area is common on-farm metrics and definitions. To design products that allow nature to thrive, new metrics and definitions are needed to determine areas, which include measuring farm-level impacts of product design decisions. For aligning with initiatives like the Global Farm Metric, businesses can play a key role in developing and applying such metrics and definitions, whilst also considering the local contexts. Now, the fifth and final area which we identified is policies. And as governments increasingly recognise the critical role that food plays, and food system transformation particularly plays, in helping to tackle climate change and biodiversity loss, businesses can help to accelerate policy development by advocating for measures that support circular design for food and nature-positive food system.
So you've heard lots from us. Now we'd love to hear from you. We're going to attempt a word cloud, which means there's tech involved, which always makes me really nervous. So are you all ready? I hope you are. So it's time to get out your phones, go to the World Circular Economy Forum app on your phone, go to the homepage, or the front page as it's called, click on Chats and Polls, select the Winter Hall, and click Word Cloud. And we would love you to answer the question, what can you start today? You might be part of a business within the food industry. You might work in policy. You might not work in the food sector, but we all eat food. And this is an area in which we can all act. So what can you start today?
It's brilliant to see some of these examples coming through, and it's working.
Educate, love that.
Yes.
Yeah, myth-busting, intensive farming, working with farmers. Yes, we're
Most definitely.
big on working with farmers.
I really like how Educate has come in so strongly. Yeah. Keep talking about the Big Food Redesign Challenge. Yes, definitely. Please do.
And talking of working with farmers, Becca doesn't often admit this, but she is one.
No, not often something I admit on the stage. But my other shoes are wellies, so brilliant. I love the fact that Educate is still in the middle of the screen and also promote as well.
Yeah.
This is great, and thank you so much for your participation so far. And it's great to hear all of these different ideas. Eating potatoes, yes, definitely. I mean, you will not know, but apparently there are 4,500 varieties of potatoes. So hopefully eating diverse potatoes, different varieties, that should be one of them too. Brilliant. Thank you so much for your participation. And it is great to hear of all of these different areas in which we can see that you're going to start making action today. It is time that we change our food system. And we can and we must redesign the food system in order to allow nature to thrive. So sadly, that is it from myself and Henrietta. Thank you so much for your participation so far. Hopefully you've had a chance to meet your neighbour and to think about your next actions too. But before we leave you, we want to leave you with some inspiration from Latin America and the amazing work that is being done out there. Please enjoy the video and the slice of inspiration that hopefully it brings you to help make the change that we need. Thank you.
A Rizoma é uma empresa que faz pesquisa, design e operação de sistemas agrícolas regenerativos orgânicos. A gente escolheu focar na agricultura regenerativa de larga escala porque essa era a peça que estava faltando. A gente vê princípios agroecológicos sendo usados na pequena escala, né, mas que não chegavam na grande escala. Assim como a gente também via muitas tecnologias que foram desenvolvidas na grande escala que não chegavam na pequena escala. Eu vejo a Rizoma Agro como uma ponte de tentar pegar o melhor desses dois mundos e criar uma nova síntese que seja produtiva e muito impactante do ponto de vista ambiental. As frutas a gente vende no mercado, a gente também processa e exporta. Os grãos a gente vende para empresas que comercializam feijão, aveia, então está na mesa dos consumidores. Ou é soja e milho que vira ração e que depois vira um produto. Os grãos, além da gente não usar nenhum pesticida, herbicida ou adubos químicos, a gente usa rotações que ajudam a recuperação daquele solo. Então, você sempre pensa o sistema no tempo, né? Então, como que você parte de uma terra com pouco teor orgânico, que geralmente é o caso, né? Quando a gente pega um pasto ou uma terra de agricultura convencional degradada, e com as rotações você vai melhorando isso ao longo do tempo. E à medida que esses sistemas foram tendo sucesso, a gente foi escalando essa produção. Aqui é a nossa agrofloresta, é uma inovação que nós criamos aqui na Fazenda da Toca. É um sistema que mistura a produção comercial de citros com árvores e outras plantas. É um design bem interessante, em que cada espécie traz um benefício para o sistema. E o segredo é como se combina tudo isso, para que se tenha um sistema de alta performance e alta regeneração.
Os três principais desafios para atingir escala na agricultura regenerativa na América Latina são o comportamento e a mentalidade dos produtores. Segundo, é a questão da tecnologia, a gente utilizar a tecnologia para monitorar os indicadores de impacto. E o terceiro e mais importante também é a questão de instrumentos financeiros.
Essa transição ela depende muito da característica do produtor, de quanto conhecimento, quanta tecnologia a gente vê essa falta de assistência técnica para esse tipo de produtor. Hoje, grande parte da pesquisa é feita pela indústria de agroquímicos. Essa produção mais agroecológica tem dependido muito de modelos de troca de informações, de peer-to-peer, né? Mas eu vejo um caminho em que a gente possa ter isso de forma mais estruturada. A gente desenvolveu uma área comercial para trabalhar em parceria com empresas interessadas em comprar produtos orgânicos e regenerativos. A gente não tem tido nenhuma dificuldade em vender esses produtos, porque é muito demandado, seja aqui ou na exportação. O mundo precisa desse tipo de alimento e as grandes empresas já estão cientes disso e buscando cada vez mais oferta. Esse canal com as empresas é muito importante. O produtor precisa desse escoamento da sua produção e ter opções que valorizem a produção dele.
Se cria muitas nomenclaturas para diferentes práticas agrícolas, como agrofloresta, agricultura regenerativa, agroecologia, mas independente do termo, o mais importante é quais são os impactos ambientais, sociais e econômicos. A gente vê que o outcome based, né, que é foco em resultado, ele é muito mais relevante do que as práticas em si.
A gente acompanha métricas de carbono, biodiversidade e água. Em termos de carbono, esse solo está com 3 a 4 vezes mais carbono do que tinha antes. Isso, por sua vez, traz maior retenção de água no solo, um solo, né, mais vivo, mais esponjoso. E também muita biodiversidade. Na agricultura regenerativa, a gente tenta usar um leque maior de plantas, porque cada planta traz um benefício para o sistema. E muitas vezes essas plantas não encontram interesse comercial, né? Então acho fundamental a gente trabalhar as cadeias e essa conscientização para que a gente use essas plantas na nossa matriz de alimentação. Na agrofloresta a gente pode usar a mandioca enquanto as árvores não se desenvolveram, né? A farinha de mandioca é um alimento sensacional, né? Que faz parte da dieta do brasileiro, mas poderia ser ampliada e substituir a farinha de trigo.
No início, a produtividade para o produtor tem um impacto por conta da transição, então é um pouco mais custosa. Mas o produtor, a longo prazo, ele vai ver que os benefícios e os ganhos econômicos são muito maiores.
Esse gap de produtividade entre a agricultura convencional e a agricultura regenerativa orgânica é uma ficção, ele não existe. A gente tem provado que a produtividade desse tipo de agricultura é equivalente e no longo prazo acredito até que superior que a agricultura convencional.
So, we've introduced circular design for food as a framework, and we've seen it in action in both Asia and Latin America, and I'm hoping that you're starting to get this connection between the way that we design our food products and the real impact, positive impact, food design can have on our natural landscapes. But it's now time to hear from our panel of fantastic speakers who have joined us this afternoon. So please welcome Tanya, Johan and Katarina to the stage. Now, circular design for food is really underpinned by the design opportunity that all of our ingredients are regeneratively produced. Now, Tanya, you are a farmer, and you've been working with farmers here in the Nordics and part of the Baltic Action Sea Group for a while now. You're a real champion of regenerative agriculture practices, and I'd love for you to share your story of how you got to this and some of the work that you've been doing.
Thank you, Berneria. Regenerative agriculture is gaining momentum in Finland. We hear a lot of feedback from companies and from farmers, all highlighting that we need a just, and I emphasize the word just, systemic change to the food chain. And regenerative farming is part of this, and it is the future of agriculture. Carbon action is a very big driving force of regenerative agriculture here in Finland. Carbon Action is a pilot put together by the Baltic Sea Action Group and launched with funding from Citra in 2017. Carbon Action is a unique and very long-term collaboration between farmers, researchers, and companies, all promoting regenerative agriculture. Carbon Action actually has 100 pilot farms, and the Carbon Action Club, which is open to all members, anyone interested in regenerative agriculture, has over 1,000 members. And we also launched an e-course on regenerative agriculture. It's 60 hours long in 2021, and that alone has over 2,000 students enrolled in it.
Wow.
So Carbon Action is a space that is actually very growing and is very viral here in Finland. My own story is very much intertwined with carbon action. We took over my husband's family farm a few years ago, and at the time I was searching for information on how to adopt more ecological farming practices, and I stumbled upon carbon action, and I attended a few events where we dug holes in the fields, we smelled the soil, we looked at worms, we talked about cover crops, and I was immediately sold. And we started making changes to our own farm. They were gradual changes. We started with crop rotation, and we started planting cover crops, and it hasn't been an easy transition. We're still on this journey. Journey is a word that has been used a lot during these 2 days. But we're committed, we're very motivated, and we're very inspired by regenerative agriculture. Now that I can see carbon action from the other side of the table, working at Baltic Sea Action Group, I see its potential in this regenerative agriculture space enormous. It is a space, collaboration network, platform, whatever you want to call it. It is a place for farmers to share their knowledge and learn from each other. And this peer-to-peer learning it's vital in regenerative agriculture because it is a change in your mindset. And carbon action gives you the tools and it gives you the support to transition into regenerative agriculture.
Thank you. I love that story, actually. It's similar to Becca's, I think, sort of headed into farming because you married somebody. Now, Johan, you work for the Axe Foundation in Sweden, and I think we've had lots of conversations about a number of projects that you're supporting. We've heard about sort of regenerative agriculture as one of the, regenerative production as one of the opportunities and design opportunities. But I'm really interested in a particular diverse opportunity that you work on around diversifying fish in Sweden. Do you want to share with the audience what that project is about?
Yes, I'd love to. We had a project with the underutilized fish in Sweden, Swedish bream from lake to plate. And it was based on the fact that in Sweden, 70% of all seafood is imported. And it's basically only 4 types. It's salmon, it's cod, it's shrimp and herring. And then we knew from a project run by the Baltic Sea Action Group that the fishermen in the Nordic gets a lot of bream in the bycatch. And this is just a trouble for the fishermen because they dispose it as a biogas and it takes some work hours. So we wanted to look into this, if we could turn the bream to food. And we started out in our test kitchen, and the first problem was that it's a lot of bones in bream, very lots of bones. And they tried to find a solution to that, and they went to Finland again, and I found a machine that you can press out the bones and the meat and separate them. So you get the bones in one pile and the meat in another pile. And then they started in the kitchen to do some trials with this, but they were not really happy with the taste and the structure. And we had other projects with broad bean. Mm-hmm. So they made a 50-50 product with beans and the bream. And then they got a fantastic product with really good taste and structure. But also you increased nutrition when you add the broad bean. Mm. And you get the price down. That's really important. And the end product was a fish cake, Asian-style fish cake. And we serve it now in schools in Sweden, and you can find it on the shelves in the grocery stores. And also the fisherman, he get a fair price. He get the same fair price now for the bream as he do for pike. And we're supporting the small-scale fishermen. So to sum up, we created a really healthy and nutritious food, and with a very low carbon footprint as well. So compared to imported salmon, it's only 1/3 of the carbon footprint.
I mean, I love that story, and I think it resonates with me, not only because you are diversifying what fish you are fishing in Swedish waters, but also because then you've added in the beans, so it's a lower impact ingredient, you're adding a legume into it. So for me, I think that really resonates as a fantastic example of how the circular design for food framework is being put into action, although that was done before the circular design for food framework was put into action. So I guess it's proof that our framework does work. But it's not the only cool project that you use. And, we talked when I was doing the visualization exercise about cookies that were made from the byproduct of the plant-based milk production system. Now, you have some of those cookies.
Yeah.
Tell me about those cookies.
Yes, I actually have some here. So, and this is a really fun project that we just embarked upon. And it was a few of my colleagues. They went to oat drink production facility in southern Sweden, and they wanted to help them to make ice cream out of oat drink. And while they were there, they found out they had a really big problem with the residue products, the press rest. That's called okara. And there was 1 truck a day of this product at the facility. And the farmers come and collect it, but they have to pay to get it transported away. So my colleague was really interested if they can do something of it. So they took a sample of this and brought it back to their test kitchen outside Stockholm and started to make bread and cookies. And we actually had a proof of concept, and wow, this is great, we can do something more about this. So now we started a project with researchers to find out more about nutritious states, and we need to homogenize the okara. If we get it from different sites, it's very different structure on it. And we just got financing last week from a Swedish innovation program to continue this research. And it's very high in protein and fiber, and that's very important. And in Sweden, 7 out of 10 people, grown adult, don't get enough fiber. So we need to do a product that is huge in daily consumption. So we're doing cracker bread. And we want to continue to work with the schools and have this introduced in the school, but also in the elderly nursing homes, because the elderly also are undernourished in Sweden. So.
It's amazing, and I think you haven't talked about the fruit that goes into the middle of those. Because if I remember correctly, that's also using particularly local fruit, isn't it?
Yes, the last batch we used wild plum, but in this batch they got in apple from also a press residue. And so they mixed in apple and they topped it with apple press residue. So it's,
and am I right in thinking that when you bake with that, you have to dry out the residue?
And there's one solution going on now that you dry the okara, and then you can grind it and get a flour, and then you can bake it. But the first thing you do when you bake it, you add water again. So we want to set up a solution that where you can use the wet okara. And the problem is when you design the factory, that you only focus on the drink production, not your waste or the byproducts. But you should set up a pipe with this, taking care of the okara at the same time. Or maybe you have a line to a bakery next door. So that's what we want to focus in the program we're starting out now.
I mean, I absolutely love that. And I know Rebecca and Hen do as well. When we wrote the Big Food Redesign report and we used a company to come up with future products, and here you are sitting having made something very similar, and it's really bringing our project to life.
And I have some to go also if you want some.
Oh, I will be taking some to go, I can assure you. But let's move over to the other side of the world and welcome Katarina from South Africa, representing the African Circular Economy Network. Now, we've talked about drying the product from the plant-based milk process. But of course, you can dry anything and do all sorts of interesting things with drying food products. And you've been working with some companies in South Africa who are doing just that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have been working with Foodmaster SA and Earth Health. And maybe just to set the scenes, in South Africa, we actually have a population that doesn't have enough access to food. So 20% of the population doesn't have access to food. There also is a lot of malnutrition happening. On the other hand, we have a country that is highly productive, right? We produce 30 million tons annually, but 10 million tons are actually being wasted as well. So you have shortcomings on both ends. And what the companies have actually seen is that you can dry pretty much what Reniera said, anything. So that's what they're doing. They're diverting the edible foods from the landfills. They wash them, they slice them up, and then they dry them. That not only prolongs the shelf life of the food, it also makes it accessible for a low-income community. But that business model didn't work quite, right? It was more of a social enterprise. And that's where actually the Branson Center of Innovation in South Africa came in. And they rethought that business model. So they created a secondary income stream. And that was creating health supplements. So they saw the health supplement and health food market as a new way of actually penetrating a new target group, which is middle to high income groups. So now you have two business models. One that is actually serving a low-income community and the other middle to high-income community. So you can actually divert more food, but you valorize it in another way. So it doesn't go to the landfill or it doesn't become energy. And that way you actually feed back the nutrients into the circle.
And remind me, the higher income piece is actually going into supplements?
It's supplements, so it's nutrient powders and vitamins, and they're also being made available in supermarkets and retail stores.
I mean, I find that fascinating when we don't often, I often forget that things that come out of the ground go into the supplements that we take and the protein shakes that we take. And I find it really fascinating that a company is using an upcycling opportunity to be able to valorize, and particularly being able to then kind of pay for the costs of doing a more social enterprise approach, which of course in Africa is really, really important. Johan, coming back to you just for a second, if people wanted to know more about the projects that you've been working on through the Axe Foundation, because I know that there are quite a few projects that kind of take on some of these different opportunities, where can they go?
To our website, and I brought some of our progress reports, so please pick one if you are interested to read more about the projects.
Brilliant. I think they're hiding on the edge of the stage there, and I've already stolen mine, so apologies if somebody misses out. Tanya, coming back, I'm going to come back to you. I think we've heard about some examples of diverse. We've heard about upcycled. In fact, we even squeezed in a lower impact, bringing in the legumes, and we've talked about regenerative production. But Rebecca and Henrietta were talking about the magic happens at landscape level when we bring that together. So how do you see this magic happening?
Well, like I said before, and it's been mentioned here before as well, it's all about the change in mindset of the farmer. And once that change is made, it allows a farmer to see and approach his or her farm in a more holistic way. And that also allows a farmer to enjoy all the benefits of regenerative agriculture. And it's not only about increasing biodiversity, it's not only about better yields, it's about all of them together. It's the economic and the ecological, it's the community and the health benefits, all of them together. And as we've said, it's a continuous journey. It's continuous improvement. And it's really important that we acknowledge that the changes can be made gradually. And even small steps, baby steps, can benefit you in many ways. And part of this learning process is the risk of making mistakes. And at Carbon Action, we support and we raise awareness of this issue as well. A few years ago at one of the Carbon Action events, we actually had this battle. In Finnish, we called it moka battle. That means a mistake battle, where we encouraged farmers to actually share what had gone wrong. So what experiments had really gone wrong? And it was very empowering. It was very hilarious to share all the mistakes that had gone wrong during the different experiments made on the fields. But of course, the fear of the unknown is never a joke. So there are the forerunners who are more willing to take the risks, and then there are the others who need support. And sort of the changes in the mindset are never only about changes on the field. They're not only the decision making doesn't only cover practical farming methods. There are a lot of aspects that influence those decisions. They can be the burden from the generations before them. You might be living in a farm where your parents have been conventionally farming for generations, and they still live with you there. We have agricultural policies, we have industry requirements. So it's never only about what the farmer decides to do on that farm because of the practical methods. But again, spreading the word and convincing companies, convincing governments and decision makers that now is the time to join in with the farmers and take them into the process and together to drive forward this transition in the food system. And collaboration, I think, is the key word here.
We've heard a lot about journey, collaboration, baby steps. And I think what you said is, you talk a lot about farming and farming practices, and then we've talked about things that companies can do to enable those different farming practices. And I think that's really what we are trying to convey as a message at the moment is that really about how food companies think about what they design for us that enables farmers to make those better decisions, to be able to give them the levers and the drivers to be able to farm in a more regenerative and holistic way. So thank you very much for joining me today up on stage. I've loved hearing about your stories, and there might be some cookies left if people want to come and try one after we finish them, but please do grab a report on your way out. So, how do we make all this happen? Well, we're all wearing our T-shirts today, and if you were here yesterday, you would have heard about the Ellen MacArthur Foundation's Big Food Redesign Challenge. And so I'm hoping that a video will play in a moment. And we're going to leave you today with our launch video and a reminder of why it is so important for companies around the world to get engaged in this agenda, and let's start making food design really so much better by putting nature at the heart of those design decisions. So, thank you.
Whether food's fun or functional, colourful or uniform, we know we cannot survive without it. Yet the current food system is a primary driver of biodiversity loss and accounts for 1/3 of global greenhouse gases. It's time to redesign the way we make food. It's time to innovate, to design foods that allow nature to thrive. That's why the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and the Sustainable Food Trust are launching the Big Food Redesign Challenge. It aims to inspire the industry to produce food that regenerates nature. The challenge will uncover pathways that allow food businesses to successfully embrace circular design. And it will enable businesses to create space for designers to experiment and test new regenerative design concepts with consumers. The Big Food Redesign Challenge will celebrate and showcase food products created using circular design principles. Food. It gives us what we need to survive. Let's redesign it so nature can thrive. It's time. Join the challenge now.